Turning away from migrant-based growth. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I'm halfway through my morning stein of coffee before I even record my first episode, and I thought we'd have a look at this article from Yahoo Finance, originally from Bloomberg. And it's to do with our economic slump that we're having here in Australia, and how it threatens our openness to immigration. Or, well, the migration-based growth that Australia's had. Now, before we go through this, I just want to bring up an Excel chart that I did. Now, what I did is I looked at our per capita GDP growth since when they first had the data in 1973. And I'll zoom in so you can see it. And you can see here, since the GFC, see this fall right here at the GFC? Since then, the trend has been going down. Well, actually, even since the 73s, the trend of GDP growth per capita has been going down, everyone. So we've still been growing, but on a per person basis, that growth has been less. And since the GFC, we've been below trend more often than we have been above trend. By that I mean, here's the trend line of growth, and we've been below it. Boom, there, below there. We were on it there, below, above in 2011. Then back down to 2012, we were below. We were above again. Oh no, so we were on the line, then below, on the line, then below, on the line, below. So you can see here that, well, it's not quite as rosy as a picture as the media and political leaders might have you know. If they're just talking about GDP is up. But if the number of people here increase, well, if we each get a slightly less slice of the pie of GDP. What do you think? What do you think? And how is that going to affect? Well, actually, population growth does have a lot of impacts on our economy. And one of them is in this little, maybe a little bit important part of the Australian economy, property. You heard of it before, guys? Houses and apartments. That seems to be a national obsession here. And you can see just from 2006. So 2008 was the GFC. And since then, our GDP growth has been below trend, pretty much, trending below growth. Look at that property increase. And here's another quote I want to bring up for everyone to share. The Cantillon effect. And it refers to a change in the relative prices resulting from a change in money supply. The change in relative prices occurs because the change in money supply has a specific injection point and therefore a specific flow path through the economy. Now we have migration coming into our nation, increasing our population. Our GDP is going up, everyone's happy. But we have a specific injection point to the money supply, either by them bringing it in or, more likely, by them settling here and living the great Australian dream, or essentially getting suckered in like all of us into property prices. That is where money supply is increased in Australia. A lot of it comes through property. We can see every time someone takes a mortgage, every time someone borrows money to get a house, that's not money taken from someone's savings account and transferred to another person. No, it's created out of thin air. It's an increase in the monetary supply. So then we get a bubble in that sector. So the problem we are facing here, the challenge we're facing, is that we're addicted to property as a nation. We are addicted to property. Just look at the television shows. Look at the discussions around stamp duty. How many people in the family dinner table are discussing stamp duty? The fact that it may be removed or land tax. How many TV shows are all obsessing about property this, property that? Am I the only one that gets all the Facebook gurus appear on your feed? This wonderful system to invest in property. Negative gear it. Only pay the interest. Paying capitals for suckers, it's going to grow. Then you just flip. Then you retire to your tropical island. Until you don't. But yes, so one could argue that there's no actual definition of a depression. People think it's just a prolonged or worse recession. That's not actually a technical definition. One argument is that a depression is a prolonged period of below-trend growth. What do you think? 12 years since the GFC, would that be a prolonged period of below-trend growth? I think it would. Could Australia have been depressed all that time? Could the economy be depressed? Could our growth be? Because here's the thing, bringing in, encouraging people to come over. And in some ways, I see it as quite a deceptive act on the part of our nation. The Property Council saying, encourage more people to come over. And I've seen it. I've met professionals who have come over from overseas, who've paid the outrageous fees to study at our university to get postgraduate qualifications, and have ended up working in a nursing home or have ended up driving Uber. Because there isn't the work there for them at that technical level. Sure, we can train people in it. You can train people in the theory. You can take their money for them to go to the course, but then we don't have the jobs. We don't have the industry. We don't have the economic complexity. So they get frustrated. A lot of them go home. And you'll see that more and more. You'll see that more and more. Because you can have a better quality of life. You can have a better quality of life where they've come from. Housing is cheaper. Much cheaper. Cost of living is cheaper. Maybe you'll start seeing Australians immigrate, get out of Australia. I know there's a few guys in the comments that have immigrated overseas, often in their retirement. What do you think? Let me know. Is that a possibility? So let's have a look through this Bloomberg article. Australia's immigration program. Oh, and I should let everyone know, I am a first-generation Aussie. My father came over here. I think he got out of East Germany, so he went over the wall. He got through it with his first family. And he applied for, Argentina, as Germans did back then. Where else? South Africa, the United States, and Australia. And Australia was the first country to take him. And so he got on the boat. Yeah, they paid for him to come over on boat. And he learned English by reading the newspaper. He ended up settling in Melbourne. Very cold. Very cold down there. I still have fond memories of my childhood in Melbourne. So there you go. I'm a first-generation Australian from fresh off the boats migrants. But you'll find the Germans tend to integrate very well wherever they settle. They're the largest minority in America, in the United States, if you didn't realize. And the food is fantastic. Just go to the German club in Brisbane, guys. Get yourself a nice wheat beer, a big pork knuckle, or some bratwurst. Yeah. Actually, I should do a HeiseSays event at the German club. We should just go and get some steins of beer. What do you reckon? Let me know in the comments if you'd be keen, if you're here in Brisbane. Can we go out now? We can. Problem is that used to be my local. And we'd have some pretty rough nights if you're drinking beer at 1 litre. I'm older now. I probably couldn't handle it. Anyway, back to the article. Enough of my rambling. So Australia's immigration program, a key factor in the economy's record stretch without a recession, is under threat amid calls for the nation to turn inward while it recovers from the pandemic. Well, we may have no choice. If we're so successful in restricting our ability to develop natural resistance to this over time, are we going to be able to open up as freely? Skills-based immigration has helped fill roles in industries experiencing high demand, slowing the aging of the country's workforce. Crucially, the swelling population has driven about 1.5 percentage points to annual GDP growth, allowing the economy to defy the business cycle. Exactly, but when you look at it on a per capita basis, it doesn't look as impressive, does it? Harry Triguboffs personifies the program. The billionaire octogenarian fled to Sydney from China in 1948, ahead of Mao Zedong's takeover, eventually becoming Australia's fifth richest man. His wealth was generated by building apartments to house the multitude who followed in his footsteps. And an interesting thing is when he talks about China, and he loves China, he talks about Taiwan. It's interesting, or that was his experience. That was his experience from his childhood. Australia was always built on migrants. We are the most successful with it, he said in an interview with Bloomberg News. Migrants are important because they work and build. And migrants, of course, need housing. Now, here's the thing. His historical perspective is based on a different type of migration to what we're seeing now. The cultural impact of the migration that happened during his time is there's less differences in the cultural diversity of migrants, shall we say, that came over during the 50s, 60s when my father came, and 70s, than now. And that has an impact on the ability for people to adapt, to work, to successfully build. It's just how it is, everyone. A German migrating to an English country is, there's a lot of similarities there, a lot of cultural similarities. There's language similarities there, and there's religious similarities there as well. All of these things allow for easier cultural integration. Here's the thing, when everyone's talking about multicultural nations, how successful they were, we're all just very young nations. Australia's only 200 years old. Canada's very young as well. And historically, it hasn't worked as well. You want cultures to merge and evolve and change, and people to learn from each other, and people to mesh together. You've got multiple ethnicities coming together and creating a new culture. But to have that, you need to encourage and ensure freedom for people to speak, freedom for people to criticize is protected. You don't want to have restrictions on speech. That's the danger, because then you isolate people and you create segregated communities. That's the problem. And that's sadly where I think politically people are heading. They want to protect and isolate and segregate, and they don't realize that all their good intentions are going to lead to more social issues and more cultural conflicts. But nonetheless, that's for another topic. So, yet Australia's bipartisan openness towards immigration is fraying amid a pandemic-induced recession. Well, the economy's growth has been depressed for some time. The more people that immigrate to a country, the greater the burden on the existing infrastructure. Our potable water stores aren't as prevalent as they were in the past. Our costs of living are going up, traffic congestion is going up, people are getting frustrated. Quality of life is going down. With the virus forcing the closing of borders, Prime Minister Scott Morrison anticipates an 85% drop in permanent arrivals this fiscal year. Bill Evans, chief economist at Westpac Banking Corp, estimates that such a reduction could limit overall population growth to about 0.75%. The population could even contract if the number of Australians leaving the country doesn't change, he said. Here's the thing, we're not meeting replacement population growth through national growth here in Australia. A lot of Western countries aren't. Japan's, their population growth is so low, their culture may not survive. The United States is just sitting there. And if you look at Harry Dent and all his arguments about demographics, he's saying Australia needs to keep bringing people in. It's the best chance we have for this coming economic calamity and the housing bubble we have. This has profound implications for the nature of the job market, for the perspective of supply, the future and structure of the dwelling construction cycle, and Australia's potential growth rate, Evans said. Supporting Australia's population growth is paramount. Australia should not accept the prospect of a collapse in net migration. Or people should just start having kids. They aren't having families. A lot of people are choosing not to have families. And that's a problem. You need young people to replace the old people. You need young people with energy and vigor to work and build and innovate. And not just, even the protesters, you may not agree with everything they're protesting about, the young people. They're scared the world is coming to an end. Or they're worried about animal cruelty. Well, no, they're not worried about animal cruelty. They're worried about people eating meat, some of them. But at least they're highlighting animal cruelty so you can get better practices in these slaughterhouses, in these farms. But it's good to see some energy there. That's the positive takeaway from them, some political energy. Australia has been hailed for running the world's best immigration program. In 2016, just under half of all Australians were either born overseas or had a parent who was. It ranks highly even among developed world counterparts. 29% of Australians were born overseas compared to 23% in New Zealand and 21% in Canada and 14% in the US. Well, there you go. I'm one of those half of Australians who had both parents born overseas. Although my father, he became Australian. He had to because he had a government job when he came over. He was quite proud of his citizenship card. Immigration played a central role in helping Australia avoid recession for 28 years, until the pandemic hit. In per capita terms, however, the expansion halted temporarily in 2013 following the mining investment boom, and again in late 2018 as the residential dwelling construction slowed. Let me have a shot of coffee. So let's jump over here and have a look at some of these graphs that they're referring to. So we can see here the migrant boost, contributions to annual population growth. We can see in New South Wales, they're losing people. So people are leaving New South Wales. Don't blame them. You've got natural increase and then the net overseas migration. There you go. Victoria, there you go. Look at that. And net interstate. People are moving to Victoria. Queensland, we're about roughly equal to all, but, we're having more babies than Queensland, Victoria and New South Wales. But interstate, people are moving to Queensland. I mean, why wouldn't you? The weather. It's the weather, the climate. South Australia, people are leaving, and I imagine that's just because of the work opportunities in South Australia are not the same as the East Coast. I know that just from architecture. But there you've got your big chunk of overseas migration there. And that's where my father's cousin, he migrated over from Germany as well. And he landed in South Australia. He got off the boat, worked for Holden his whole life. Doesn't really happen anymore, does it? There's natural increase. Western Australia, there you go. People are leaving the state, but you've got more people coming from, more people having families and more people coming from overseas. And Tasmania, everything's going up. So the persistent population growth has been a boost for the economy. And there you go. 1.5% year on year. But as I was saying, the economy saw more regular dips when population are taken into account. Okay, so there we go. Let's have a look. There in 13, we dipped below. There we dipped below. We just didn't have 2 quarters of growth to declare a recession. Well, there, we're probably there. 1, 2, what was that? Quarter on quarter, is that quarters? So we're 2 quarters in negative growth on a GDP per capita basis. So we had a recession, if you look at it like that. The post-pandemic question we must ask now is this. When we restart our migration program, do we want migrants to return to Australia in the same number and the same composition as before the crisis? Said Christina Kennelly, the opposition Labor spokesperson for immigration. There we go. And I think One Nation jumped on that because they've been warning about just the economic impacts of immigration for a while. And the media and everyone has just attacked them as, being racist, this and that. Which, if you look at their policies, it's not actually true. It's not actually true. I find I'm seeing in the comments on certain articles, particularly when Hansen is talking about something, and people are going, wow, I never thought I'd agree with Hansen, but I am. It's just the way the media portrays certain people. And we can see now why they want to get more people here, simply to prop up housing, to prop up the property bubble. Why not? That's what they want to do. And I mean, sure, Australia is a great nation. There's a lot of opportunities here, but I think we're conning a few people, particularly all the people coming over and doing high-level degrees here, where there's no opportunities to even work here. We're getting a brain drain. So our answer should be no, she wrote in Main in an opinion article. Our economy recovery must help all Australians get back on their feet. And to do that, we need a migration program that puts Australian workers first. What Bloomberg's economists say, migration has always been a key driver of Australia's growth story over the past decade, bolstering demand, particularly for housing. And there we go. And then we have this effect. That's an increase in some monetary supply there, which is part of the reason why we have a housing bubble. Easing labour market and demographic pressures through a strong supply of young skilled workers. A migration-led slowdown in population growth risks exposing several underlying weaknesses in the economy. dampening demand and revealing shortcomings in the training of skilled workers. Well, James McGinty, economist. Australia's Treasury Department said in a 2018 research report that migration is typically attacked because it adds to existing problems. The department noted that from 1996 to 2016, Australia's population rose by more than 6 million people, with 75% of the growth in the state's capital cities. Issues such as congestion and pollution are not new. These issues have concerned policymakers for decades and are the result of a range of legacy issues, such as environmental practices or town planning decisions, in addition to population growth, the Treasury report said. However, population growth tends to heighten existing challenges. Veronica Sparagis, business manager and co-owner of Ultima Building Group in Sydney's western suburbs, warned that scaling back migration... Oh, she wouldn't have a conflict of interest. She wouldn't have a conflict of interest at all. Warned that scaling back migration would hurt home building. It could erode demand for new homes and deprive the industry of specialist knowledge from offshore, she said. Specialist knowledge from offshore. I honestly, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. We have the technical capabilities to train someone in building. It isn't that advanced. Most construction spec homes and things are not that advanced. And then, so what? You hire someone in as a contractor for a time from offshore. Net migration creates demand for an additional 80 to 100,000 homes per year, representing around 2/3 of underlying property demand. Just think about that, okay? So these 80 to 100,000 homes is around 2/3 of underlying property demand. And with what we've learned about the Cantillon effect and property prices going up, and remember, property isn't actually calculated in CPI properly. Not as you'd think. But it affects it. It affects our cost of living because people can't spend as much if they're saving a mountain of money for a home deposit. The industry most impacted by a cut in migration is construction, she said. The building industry may be forced into a standstill. So there we have it, everyone. Calls to turn away from our migration-based growth. From labor of all sorts. And we can see here from this chart, we have been growing below trend for some time. If you take GDP and population growth or population into account, we've dipped below. We've dipped below many times. So it's been propping us up, everyone. It has been propping us up. What do you think? Do you think Australia should just go back to the way it was, bring more people in? Do you think it's fair and reasonable that, we're encouraging people to come to Australia and then their children who are born here are going to be stuck with all this mountain of debt? We suckering them in. Or do you think it'll all be good? It will all be good. What do you think? Are you a migrant? Have you come over to Australia? Has it been everything you've expected? Or did your parents come over? You first generation like me, living the Aussie dream. What do you reckon, everyone? Where do you think it will go? Where is the political will to act? Will they just open up and do everything they can for housing? Somehow I think they will. As always, please let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I create here, there are a few ways you can. You can join the channel on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us via using our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or Kucoin. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you next time.